Hi everyone, welcome to the ContentLift Hackathon showcase. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes, so in the meantime, feel free to grab a drink or get comfortable. All right, guys, I think we're going to get started. I expect some people will be joining late, so they can obviously catch up with the recording. We'll get started because we have quite a lot to cover today. Um, so welcome everybody. It's really great to be on this call with you on this live event with you today. We do have a packed agenda. I'll start with a short introduction of YAI, who we are, and why we decided to host this hackathon. Then we'll move on to one of the most exciting parts of the event, which is the announcement of the hackathon winners, and we'll have a brief showcase of some of the work that they've produced. Then we'll move on to the panel discussion. So we are lucky to have today four of our five hackathon judges who will be discussing the topic of content creation in the age of AI and how to keep it factual, accurate, clear, and human. And at the end, we have an exciting offer for all of our hackathon participants, which I'll be sharing with you guys at the end. All right, so let's start with why we're all here today. AI has made it really incredibly easy to create content, as you all know. It's faster than ever before now to create a piece of content. But with that speed, a lot of challenges came about as well. We find nowadays that AI content is full of hallucinations, or there are lots of missing sources or unreliable sources that have been completely made up by the AI. And these can create compliance headaches because every piece of content still needs to meet internal and regulatory standards. And that's where ContentLift comes in. We've created ContentLift as a trust layer for AI generated content. So ContentLift automatically checks any draft, whether written by a human or by AI, for factual accuracy and verified sources. It also reviews tone of voice, clarity, and readability, so your message stays consistent, credible, and clear. So what does that mean for marketers? Well, it means you can publish faster by using AI, but also with confidence. And for compliance teams, it means fewer manual reviews, and you can have a piece of content that is audit ready from the start. So why did we decide to launch the hackathon? Well, we created this initiative to see how you, marketers, creators, can use AI responsibly. And over the past month, participants from around the world have been experimenting with the tool in their own workflows. So they've been able to test how it can help make AI-generated content more accurate, credible, and human. And throughout the hackathon, we invited all the participants to test ContentLift on a real blog content that's been created by AI. And that piece of content came along with an image and a video as well, which was part of the assessment criteria as well. So our panel of judges, who you'll meet very soon, and they evaluated all the entries based on creativity and originality, relevance to real world marketing, and also the effective use of ContentLift, of the insights that came from ContentLift. And trust me, choosing the top three wasn't easy, but let's get to the exciting part. And now I'm very pleased to introduce you to our winners. So in third place, we have Victor Ozemoya. His entry explored the link between social media marketing and revenue. That's the theme that everyone in marketing can relate to. And he wrote this piece from a brief from one of our brand partner called Ye Starter Marketing. And here is what our judges said about his entry. That it is honest, real stuff that a lot of people will relate to. The story was warm and relatable, though a bit more polish and stronger visual could take it to the next level. But it's still an authentic and thoughtful piece. So congratulations, Victor, for making it to the third place. Um, in second place, we have Olaleye Segun Stefan. So his project blended authority and empathy, exploring the science behind performance and focus. So his piece was written, was provided, sorry, by the brief was provided, sorry, by a brand called Optimize Mind Performance, and that was also one of our brand partners. And the feedback from our judges was that the piece was full of solid evidence and that they could trust what was being said. The visuals made it feel calm, grounded, and in safe hands. One way to improve it would be to make it even stronger. It would be to see more brand personality and emotion layered into the story. But massive congratulations to you, Olaleye, on making it to second place. And finally, our first place winner is Diana Deryazna. She wrote a piece that was briefed by Maze Reality, another one of our brand partners. And her project, which was called The Ultimate Guide to Building a Virtual Tour for Your Hotel Website, was everything that our judges had hoped to see. There was smart commercial storytelling, tech delivered with visual flair, and everything joined up for a real world campaign. So massive congratulations to you, Diana. If we had one wish for next time, it would be just a bit more visual surprise. But even so, this entry stood out as truly scalable and ready for markets. So congratulations to you. You are the 2025 ContentLift Hackathon champion.
Well done, Diana.
I wanted then to take a moment. I don't know if you can hear the sound that comes with these videos, but I wanted to take a moment to show you some of the video work that came out of the hackathon. So one of the most exciting things about this year's challenge was watching the participant experiment not only with text but also with images and videos. So these are some of the clips that were created by the participants using our built-in video generation tool, and it allows them to bring their campaign to life visually. So it's pretty inspiring to see what's possible when creativity meets credibility, combining the accuracy and credibility of the text content with the visual content like video. All right, now we can move into one of the highlights of today's showcase, which is our panel discussion. So I'm pleased to be joined by 4 of our 5 judges. We'll be discussing content creation in the age of AI. And today we have Gemma, Jacob, Emma, and Sarah joining us. They are experienced copywriters, editors, and content strategists who have worked hands-on with AI in their daily workflows. And before we dive into the questions, I would love for each of you to briefly introduce yourself. Maybe we start with Gemma.
Sure. Hello. I am Gemma. I've spent 9 years in tech startups and scale ups, basically focusing on content creative and brand, but with a copywriting background.
Thank you, Jim. Jacob?
Thanks, Jesse. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob. Unironically, ironically, my surname is Story, which I've been asked a few times, like, is that actually your name if you're a writer? I've been writing for tech brands for over 10 years now. All started when I studied journalism a very long time ago. Today, I'm head of marketing, which includes content at a company called Salve, who are a financial crime platform working with banks.
Thank you, Jacob. Emma?
Okay, I'll introduce myself, but I'm taking a risk. The dog might bark. Yeah, I'm Emma. I've been in marketing since the old days, since print. I love to stay ahead, so I'm really keen to work with AI tools. I kind of jumped on board ChatGPT when it was launched, and mostly focusing on content strategy, brand strategy, and copywriting.
Great. Thank you very much, Emma. How about you, Sarah?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm a senior editor and content strategist. I'm currently working freelance, mostly writing about, well, all kinds of things from like music, licensing to cybersecurity at the moment. So real broad spectrum. I've got a lot of years in content strategy and SEO, but I also have a kind of writing editorial background, sort of helping brands and organizations use their words for impact.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks, everyone, for introducing yourselves. We have a wide mix of judges today on the panel, which is great. You have the copywriting angle, the content strategy angle, the editing angle. So I think this will be great for our participants to maybe see themselves in any of our judges in their future career. Let's dive straight into the questions. The first question really is around the writer's role in an AI world. And I wanted to ask you, Gemma, how do you see the role of professional copywriters evolving as AI tools become more embedded in the creative process?
Sure. So I think there's a kind of hysteria tendency when a new tool comes out. And because of the nature of business to kind of strive for efficiency, AI tools are naturally seen as an opportunity to do more with less. And I guess in lots of ways that is true. But how you define less for me is a really important thing to think about. I don't think it means invest less in people or in expertise. Because I really do think that the best results kind of come from expert input. So it's the one that understands the craft and that has an understanding of how a piece of writing might be elevated, but could save valuable time on automating things that you don't love or that there isn't time to do I knew I'd mess up these words, sufficiently manually. So for me, that's things like proofreading or stakeholder editing. And by that, I mean being able to show multiple versions of the same piece to more clearly demonstrate and discuss strengths and weaknesses between a few pieces, because that can be really time consuming and is often something you don't have time to do. So you just have to kind of voice it over to stakeholders, which isn't always helpful. So I don't necessarily see the expertise or craft changing, but I do think that the way of working should. So these tools can improve like your ear for tone, your efficiency for sure, your ability to explain your work to clients and stakeholders. So that, in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for sharing this, Gemma. I think we've seen even in our line of work as well, working with clients, we've seen clients embracing AI, but still seeing the value of using the human to use those AI tools in the best possible way. I don't see it anytime soon as being completely replaced by those AI tools, because they just don't necessarily get the tone right, and all the subtle nuances that us humans are able to pick up on. My next question actually is for you, Jacob, and it's around has AI changed the way you approach your writing or research process? And if so, how?
Yeah, so I think the overall process has changed like quite considerably thanks to AI. On the surface, we're still using humans to write, but along the way, AI really makes me like enables me to do things faster. So if everything we do at Salve involves subject matter expert interviews to kind of verify, to give us an opinion, to give us a direction for the piece or a customer voice. And if I'm going to join one of those interview calls, I might not know about the subject. I'm not a financial crime expert. So if I don't know about the subject, I can use ChatGPT deep research to prep at least, so I can turn up to the call and at least not spend half of this expert's time like just kind of getting me up to speed before I can even
Yeah.
ask them questions, which is like something I've had to do in the past. And then we can have a good conversation. We can record that, and then everything we do comes out of these these recorded interviews. And one thing I like to do is like kind of give the AI multiple interviews and be like, okay, what patterns are you seeing across these 5 different transcripts that might take me like a few hours to kind of pick through and like highlight manually. So the writing itself is still done by a human, but there's 2 examples there that she's along the way. Once we get that copy signed off by the subject matter expert and they're happy with it, AI is really good for like repurposing that content and chopping it down for like social and email and things like that, like some of the kind of more time consuming parts of writing copy that just kind of need something quickly. And that's because we've got the verified like example of copy we can vouch for, and then it maybe only needs like a few light tweaks on top of that. So yeah, using it throughout the process just to kind of make my life faster and a bit easier along the way, really.
Okay, and that makes sense. Even that's in the context of writing, and even for non-content writers like myself, for example, I also use it throughout the process of in the way I work, and it saves me an enormous amount of time. So similarly to writers, so that makes a lot of sense. The next question I have is for you, Sarah, and it's about where do you see personally draw the line between using AI and depending on it? Actually, that's probably a good segue with what Jacob was talking about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically going off the back of what Gemma and Jacob say, it's a lot about kind of making those manual tasks, sort of repurposing content, doing multiple versions, proofreading, all of that. You can make it so much easier, faster, more efficient. That said, I think it's really important to, if you are a copywriter, to be able to maintain your ability to write, to have your own kind of spark, your own voice, maintain that voice. I think to be an effective copywriter who stands out on the market, it's super important to keep that skill going. And that means sometimes you need to write without AI, or you need to use take certain parts of the process where you will do it yourself. That doesn't mean don't use AI to check it, but certainly keep your own creativity going. So I mean, what I would say is focus your use on efficiency rather than doing the entire job. And what I ask myself is, where I draw the line is, am I using it for the speed and to maybe spark inspiration? Give me a list of things I could write about, for example, this particular brand, or am I using it to produce the whole piece? I think that's where I draw the line, sort of between speed and doing the work itself.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Emma. Sorry, Sarah, not Emma. We'll slightly move on from the topic of the writer's role in an AI world to the topic of accuracy and responsibility. So Emma, I've got a question for you around what are the checks and processes that do you personally follow to verify the fact that the facts that have been generated by AI tools?
For me, it all starts with the human, actually. Gaining that client's trust by chatting with them, chatting to, as some of the guys have said, those internal stakeholders, those subject matter experts first. I think there's a lot of trust that can be built by demonstrating that you've already dug into their brand as much as you can, kind of what's available publicly and what's available in-house. And once during those calls that you've evidenced that you've kind of done your homework as a human being, I think there's a lot more trust then that can be created when you introduce that you use AI, or if they want you to use AI, etc. And then obviously it's the common sense then of just cross-checking, fact-checking, date checking. And the brilliant thing is, we can use AI even to just ask that question: are there any disputes with these claims or these resources, or are they still relevant? Are they still timely? So yeah, there are things that we would have done as humans with regards fact checking before the age of AI. I think AI helps us check things faster. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Especially, we've spoken as to brands in regulated industries like, healthcare or financial services, and they create like content in volume, and therefore they use AI most more often than not. But the fact checking is absolutely critical for them due to the regulation that they have to follow, and indeed saving time, not having to do this fact checking manually is paramount for them. But it's all a matter of how it's being used, and it needs to be you need to be able to trust that the fact checking has been done properly, and the human needs to be able to have the final say as to, yes, actually this is correct or this is not correct.
Yeah, I think that's what I really love about ContentLift. One of the things that really delighted me when I was using it to create content with seeing the additional resources that it could give me, because sometimes you might be provided with a certain number of assets by your client or team, and then to have others thrown up that may just give you that little golden nugget, or that little bit extra that surprises and wows or makes your work stronger, was really great. So nice feature within ContentLift, that.
Thank you very much, Emma. Our next question is for you, Jacob. One of the biggest challenges that we see in AI-assisted writing is the accuracy that we just talked about. So how do you make sure that your content stay reliable when AI is part of your workflow?
Yeah, sure. I think the way I look at it is it's kind of being mindful of what you ask AI to do. So for me, I don't feel I can ask AI to write something that I couldn't necessarily write myself, because then how can I kind of verify that? I think that's also why we keep mentioning across these answers, like SMEs and interviews are still like core parts of the workflow. When this question reminds me of something from like the start of my career. I remember I started working with this cloud consulting startup, and I kind of got it in my head that I was going to write as the CTO. I was going to write as this CTO with loads of experience, and I was trying to like almost like replicate him and his knowledge, which obviously like I was like 24 and he had like 24 years experience or whatever. So I was never going to be able to write as this guy, but I kept trying, and eventually he just kept saying no to everything. I think if AI had existed back then, I would have been like, write as my CTO, and he'd have still said no to every one of them, because it lacked that depth, that knowledge, that kind of like experience that he had. So it's about how that lesson is like, how do you use your experts to ensure that reliability? And sometimes along the way as well, I think like if I'm kind of using AI for something and I'm like a little bit unsure of like how it might have arrived on an outcome or an answer or whatever, I'll sort of say like, okay, where have you got this from? Which parts of the transcript I've given you? Can you quote them in your, like, show me line by line how you used it? And that's a really good way of being like, okay, I can see how you've got there, and I'm comfortable with this as to move forward with it.
So it gives you the ability of actually fact-checking the fact-checking, almost, basically. Okay, that's great. My next question is for you, Sarah. Do you think it's realistic or even necessary for copywriters to fact-check every AI suggestion, and where should that responsibility sit?
Yeah, so I think that when it comes to AI suggestions, I think it's just as important to fact check those claims as it is to fact check something from any other source. So whether that's a writer, someone in your team, if it's going to be published, you need to fact check that, whether it's from AI or not. I think that it's definitely the responsibility of the copywriter to fact check what they are producing, and editors as well when they're publishing. I've worked as an editor for a really long time, and I'm fact checking pretty much everything, every claim, whoever it's written by or whether it's come from AI. I think that what's really interesting is that we often have, misinformation exists all over the internet, but there are a lot of really interesting ones that are coming up because of AI, a lot of strange hallucinations. I think we're all really familiar with them. And one of the ones that I found quite funny recently was it was an article about Lily Allen's new album, and it was listing non-existent songs. And I was like, oh, I didn't hear this one. So I went to look it up and was like, that doesn't exist. This must have been created by a machine, because I don't think that a human would just make up these songs.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to double check your facts before submitting it to a client. It's your reputation that's on the line there. And also, as an editor, you shouldn't publish without verifying information. I do think, as Emma said, there is a lot of time saved checking claims using AI and using ContentLift as well. Like, that was one of the things that took me the longest time as an editor, was double checking everything that a writer had written. And with ContentLift, when you can just see that claim and find a source straight away, that saves like potentially hours of work. So I think that AI does have a real place in fact checking, but it's still important to make sure you're doing it.
Yeah, that's that is a very good point. I think one of the things that we've seen is that when it comes to hallucination, when you use an AI tool to create content and you've been using it for a while, that AI tool kind of knows you. It knows how you like things to sound, what you want to hear, and it will try to please you. And often, to do that, it will make things up just to validate a point that it thinks you want to hear.
Yeah.
And that's where the hallucination just come about. And when you first read it, you probably think, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I would have written. But once you check actually some of those claims, a lot of them are not backed by anything. And it's, as you said, your reputation that is at stake. So it's really, really important to be critical about what AI is writing and fact checking everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now we can maybe talk a bit about brand voice and tone of voice and clarity, which is another side of what you can do with AI. So the next question that I have for you is for Gemma. So as we know, AI can mimic the tone, but often really struggle with nuance. I was talking about this just earlier. So how do you think writers can maintain brand authenticity and clarity when using AI-generated content?
So for me, I think it's quite a simple answer. Like, I think you just treat it like you would any other tool. So you're the person that's the expert, and AI is the tool to help you work. For example, if you were to ghostwrite a book and you don't check the content before approving it for print, the onus is kind of on you for having done the job lazily, or having outsourced too heavily, and not just relying on the tool to replicate you. So I guess kind of what Sarah was saying about editing, it's the job isn't finished when you've just kind of pushed that draft out. You do need to go over it again with a fine-tooth comb, and the things that you're bringing to it are going to be that tone, that creativity.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like yeah, once I was saying you can't learn, you can't lose your skill. You need to be able to write still. So it's that's where the nuance will come as well. Have you seen examples of AI getting the wrong tone and what can we learn from them, Jacob?
Yeah, so I think in B2B it's getting better, but like there's a lot of brands and people that maybe don't really like see the importance in like the written word. So like I see as a result now that AI is like everywhere, like really lazy, like call outreach and like LinkedIn messages, people trying to pitch services to you, and it's like kind of really easy to do these things cheaply and quickly and kind of get going. But like we've all got personalities. We've all got, when you speak to us, we've all got personalities, but when you kind of just give this whole thing to the AI, you completely lose the sense of that voice and that person. So it's like, yeah, see, way too many examples to even like think of, but like it's sort of easier than ever to produce words cheaply and quickly, but it doesn't always mean they're going to be like the right ones for whatever you're doing.
And therefore that can also impact like the outcome, right? If you're gonna do it quickly and fast, and but then the results that you're trying to get from that campaign or that piece of content, you're just not gonna get it. And it can also massively impact the trust and the brand reputation as well.
Yeah, I think that people are getting really good at spotting AI. And although I like to see more M dashes in use. I think when we see them every line, it kind of is a bit of a tell that maybe you've relied on a machine a little bit too much.
That's very, very true.
And return spoiler alert. AI loves to say spoiler alert when it's
Yeah.
trying to be playful.
Actually, this one is for you, Emma. What advice would you give to copywriters that are trying to maintain their voice while integrating AI into their workflow?
Yeah, so again, I think it comes back to a little bit of research, of the brand that you're working with, because assuring yourself that you've kind of become as familiar as possible, and obviously double checking that with the client or whoever is your point of contact there. Old school stuff like just having the brand tone of voice guidelines and a checklist next to you, and examples of words that they not just do but don't use. All those things are helpful and probably common sense to everybody. I think in considering that with regards AI, some of the, as Jacob said, B2B brands that I've worked with in insurance or financial services say, we want to differentiate through our tone of voice, but it's so scary for them because they're regulated, and as a result tend to be, super cautious. So which you can, an experienced a writer will know how to manage that, how to be a little bit experimental and go carefully with them, and at the same time not breach the compliance side of things. I kind of have more fun with challenger brands and B2C because you can get a little bit wilder with the tone of voice and the content and things, but I feel that B2B is going to be catching up, giving itself an edge through tone of voice. And I think that's where AI can be helpful if you're speaking to people that are both cautious about AI, cautious about sounding too out there in their tone of voice and their brand, giving them examples that AI has written just to explain things like different tones of voice from different brand archetypes. Hey, this is how you'd sound as Sage, this is how you'd sound as Everyman. Again, that's where AI is going to be able to speed things up, but also reassuring them that you still have respected their brand tone of voice and you get it, and you've got all the checklists and you've heard what they've said and they do and they don't want, etc.
Okay, now that makes actually a lot of sense.
Could I add to that as well?
Sure.
That I think that knowing your voice as well is really important, and being able to kind of self-annotate, so know exactly what it is that you're bringing to the table, so that it's really clear to you how you're differentiating from what an AI is suggesting, and also to kind of keep what you're writing within a set of confines. So you don't just go wild with AI suggestions, but you also don't go wild with your suggestions, and you keep everything feeling neat. And then when it comes to showing either like clients or stakeholders, you can be clear and articulate about what it is you have created, and what an AI has done and how value has been added with either. I do think that annotation and kind of knowing who you are as a copywriter is important.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Gemma. Let's move on to the topic of creativity and credibility. So my question here is for you, Gemma, actually, again. How do we balance efficiency and creativity when AI can produce content so quickly?
So AI can produce content quickly, yes, but that doesn't mean that it's kind of ready to go without a second glance. And I think, if anything, tools should improve your creativity because you're saving a bunch of time on producing generic bits of content. An example of what I mean by generic bits of content would be the technical requirements to hit kind of search traffic. And I'd also probe at the level at which you're willing to outsource your work to a tool, because why bother creating something generic when you now have the time to put into the strategy that goes behind it? For truly generic content, you don't really benefit from having a copywriter. And I would say that to an extent the same is also true when it's created manually. Anyone can kind of copy and paste something. So for standout content, whether you're doing that via AI or completely manually, you need to see how you're going to benefit from having an expert. And I think that benefit comes from expertise, obviously, which comes in the shape of like creativity and unique voice. So yeah, I don't think the speed at which you create content means that you're not returning to it to elevate what it was you were going to create, and hopefully this should give you more space to put the creativity into it.
So you know, the last question, maybe a question to all of you guys. You know, a lot of people tell me that they use AI to help them come up with ideas, so for brainstorming, and then some use it to also write, but others decide to write by themselves. The question that it's kind of an unplanned question, so just throwing it out there, guys. You may or may not have an answer, but when using AI for brainstorming, you know, to come up with those creative ideas, doesn't it feel to you guys like you are also outsourcing the creative side of a piece of content?
I do have an answer to this, but does someone else want to go first? Because I've been talking for ages.
I could quickly say how I use it for brainstorming, if that helps, because I actually do I do worry to some extent whether that is outsourcing creativity if you are using it simply to say, oh, what are some ideas for this article? One thing that I do quite like to do is ask it for some really like specific suggestions, and then use those suggestions to find my own kind of path into something. So I might ask for a list of topics, and then within those topics, I will then use that as a structure to think about kind of subtopics, different articles, things like that. I think sometimes it's really hard to just get yourself going with inspiration. I feel like there are some people that can do that. I don't think I'm one of them. I need a little kick to get there.
Okay.
I think also it kind of comes down to what you're asking of it. So I have found if I say brainstorm with me, the results aren't great. It almost goes back to you're only as good as the brief. So the more information you give it about where you want to go, then the better. Obviously, as Sarah's saying, it might be fine that it gives you a top level something, and then you can go off do whatever you want to do, digging into that, and then come back. But I'm still of the mindset that with regards to creativity, you know, as humans still have the edge in terms of that lived experience and reading between the lines and all of those kind of turns of phrase, that we've got something that we can bring to the party as human beings that, you know, AI doesn't have. So as, you know, again, as Sarah said, they will inevitably be something that it will do, it will throw at you that will spark that lived experience, and then that, you know, that creativity with you to take it a bit further.
Okay, and that makes sense. Yeah, thank you, Emma. Gemma, do you want to add something?
I'm back. Yes, I think that I guess Sarah, we would probably make quite a good team, because I am an ideas person, but very poor at refining them. So could probably come up with 20 ideas from scratch, but that would then use the AI to kind of help me steer down a specific path, rather than just coming up with this very overarching kind of unhelpful idea to actually create something. And I would tend to use it. So I would probably never ask a tool, come up with an idea or something broad, but I would probably use it in the way that I would currently use Google to come up with an idea, which is usually just throw in a random word that's popped into my head, see what's generated, and then from that create some stems from it that become something more specific, and that can kind of grow into something. So I think there's lots of different ways to use it, but what it sounds like we're all saying is you don't outsource it entirely. Like, you don't just say, I would like an idea, and then run with whatever has been generated. Like, you do need to be the person that's either refining it or growing it.
Just to add to that, I completely agree with everyone's points. I think just trying to think of something different without kind of repeating what you guys have said, which is all brilliant, is like, I find that generally, like, the earlier I can bring the AI into the project and kind of show it what I'm trying to do along the way, the better I can get out of it, whatever that is, rather than just being like, okay, I'm at step 3, I need help with step 3. Like, the more context I can give it, the more it can come along with me, the more I kind of like find that useful ideas and maybe things I haven't thought about pop up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense actually. As Emma was saying, you know, context is everything. So the more context you can give it, the more value you get from it. Okay, great, thank you guys. We're gonna move to the last sort of topic of this panel discussion, which is all about ethics, trust, you know, the future of copywriting. So Sarah, what ethical considerations should copywriters keep in mind when using AI tools?
So despite all the sort of handy things that AI can do for you, there's like so much that we need to be thinking about as well. And I think that's what makes them kind of controversial at the same time. And I think that one of the big ones, especially for creatives, is that we need to remember that these, especially things like ChatGPT and Perplexity, you know, all of them, they were all trained on large amounts of existing work. And that has like a lot of implications. So for one thing, you know, original creators were not paid for this. So I always find it's a little bit, I find that when I write something, if I'm using something that's come from an AI, I would like to find out where it got it from and then credit, you know, or provide a source for where I found this, you know, fact, claim, whatever it is. It's really important to check that you're not plagiarizing, because sometimes, you know, a chatbot is not going to tell you where it got its sentence from. There are lots of really good tools that can check for plagiarism, and you know, if you find that information online somewhere else, it's really important to cite it properly. You know, use your external links, whatever your style guide says to do, make sure it's cited. I think one of the major things as well is, like, because of the training data it's trained on, you know, there might be assumptions and stereotypes, potentially even discrimination within these data sets. You know, they're not sort of perfectly objective. So I think it's really important to make sure that these kinds of things are not slipping into your content. You know, make sure that everything that you say is like fair and representative. Always read it back, make sure there's nothing that could be misconstrued. And that's the same for factual accuracy, which I think we've kind of covered pretty comprehensively. And I think kind of the final one would be that it's perhaps like less important in the grand scheme of things, but for you as a creative, it's essential. It's making sure that you stay competitive and you avoid kind of over reliance on AI, because that's the way that you're going to be able to stand out, keep your skills up, share those skills with others, and basically, stand out when you're looking for work.
Yeah, I think Gemma mentioned it earlier as well, but it's really important to keep in mind that although AI can make your work easier, but it is just a tool that you, as the expert, you can use that tool to make your work easier / better, but it should not replace you, otherwise you'll make yourself redundant.
Perfect. So there's one other big ethical thing that I forgot to mention, and that's that it might train on your data. So don't include personal, client, confidential information. Like, that's huge. Just don't, like, make sure it's anonymous.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. A very good point with those LLMs, as we know, large language models. This one is for anyone, really. How important is transparency? So should audiences or clients know when AI has been used in the creative process?
I've got an opinion on this, and so I think personally, I don't really think it's a big deal. Like, if I kind of think of it like ghostwriting, like if you see like a CEO on LinkedIn, for example, there's a good chance they didn't write their own posts. A guy called Shane writes most of our blogs. They don't go out as him. He doesn't work for us. He just works with us. They got us as our CEO, Talvi. Talvi's involved throughout the process. He's involved at the idea stage. He's quoted. They're his words. So it's just he's Talvi's a busy guy and he's not a writer. So I don't really see AI as any different to like a ghostwriter in a sense. Like, if it's factual, the right process being followed, all the things Sarah mentioned around ethics, so everything's like thought through as if you're going to write it yourself, then I don't really see why that's a big deal for me.
I also have a view on that, which is kind of same, kind of different. So I think I largely agree with what Jacob's saying, but I also think that it depends on what's being written. So is the writing the thing that's on sale? Is the writing the product? Is it an opinion piece, an media outlet that's written by a specific person, and you're reading it because you want to know their thoughts and they're being kind of penned as a writer? Is it a book? Is it a set of reviews about a product? And if yes to any of those things, then how has the tool been used? I think that's kind of helpful to think about and to know. And then I think the key point is it misleading someone? So I think in Jacob's example, no, like I don't think anyone expects CEOs to do all of their socials. But then if it's a ghostwritten novel, for example, knowing whether or not it's ghostwritten does have an impact on sales, like the Millie Bobby Brown example. And so I think their transparency is more important. So there's kind of murkiness to not mention it in some scenarios, and when it comes out, people are reasonably scandalized in some examples. But then I think when it's just not just copywriting, but copywriting is a kind of a craft, and it's a vehicle for something else, like to sell something else. So in the case of, say, like blogs, white papers, where it's already gone through the usual editorial process, I personally don't see what value is added by declaring that it's AI. But yeah, I think that there's some nuance to it.
That's really, you mentioned something there, Gemma, that kind of set me off thinking, which is that I'm writing a book at the moment, and I've made a decision that like none of my words for that go anywhere near the AI. And like, yeah, that's something I want to do myself, even though I keep getting stuck and spending weeks looking at the same paragraph. Like, I know what I'm trying to do, and this is a project that I'm delivering. So I do see that, yeah, that nuance is really important, that there are certain times when, like, yeah, if I'm reading an author's book, if I was reading like Catcher in the Rye and it was like, you know, AI generated, I'd feel pretty cheated.
Totally.
Emma, did you want to add something?
Yeah, you know, I think for me, when I'm freelancing, I have, you know, an AI usage policy on my website so that I can direct anybody to that, because it's such a contentious one for some at the moment, whether you do or you don't as a writer. And if you say no, I don't, it's almost like if it transpires that you've even just used it to data analyze or something, then maybe you were being deceitful. And if you say you do, there's this misconception that you're not as good as you say you are, you're not worth paying, whatever, or they may as well have just gone to AI and done it themselves. So I think copywriting and content writing, like many other fields, are generally not well understood in terms of them mostly being 80-90% research and compiling and creating, you know, and 10% actually doing the writing. That doesn't help us. But yeah, I think I agree with everything everybody said about depending on who it is and what it is and for what purpose. I err on the side of caution by almost saying, if you want to go look what I use it for, here, you know, here it is, here's my thoughts on it. But also as it's just coming back to the client and asking what their views are on it, and if somebody is or isn't using it in-house, and whether they would like it or not, or whether they've got use examples in-house. I think all of those things, again, help build a little bit of trust and understanding.
Great. We've covered a lot today. Thank you guys so much. I think it was a very insightful discussion. And I hope for everybody that is listening that gave you a perspective from a writer, an editor, a content strategy standpoint, will help you in your future careers as well, to decide which path you guys want to go on. We are going to wrap up the conversation here. Thank you so much, Sarah, Emma, Gemma, and Jacob. Before we close, I wanted to thank every single participant again for their time and your creativity. And as a token of our appreciation, we wanted to offer 3 months of free access to AI and to ContentLift to all the hackathon participants. So you can continue to explore how to lift your content even further, especially if you're applying for jobs or if you're already employed for your current employer as well. So at the end of this showcase, you receive an email with your access link and instructions as well. So thank you, everybody. This hackathon wasn't just about competition. It was about collaboration between human and AI, and between creativity and responsibility. So thank you all again for being part of this journey, and congratulations once more to our winners. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day, and speak soon.